This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or financial advice. Please consult with a professional for specific advice tailored to your situation. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and any guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of First National Bank of Lake Jackson. This episode discusses topics that are subject to change. Always review your current sources.
First National Bank of Lake Jackson presents Bank on It with your host, Dave Mayberry.
Welcome all, both here in our studio and those streaming online. Today, we welcome our very first guest, one of our own, Kristie Sellers, Chief Lending Officer right here at First National Bank, Lake Jackson. Thank you for joining us, Kristie.
Happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to what the rest of this conversation is going to bring. And let's get into it.
Well, we're going to find out a bunch.
Oh, okay.
Let's get right into it.
I'm ready.
Kristie, number one, what's the story behind how you became part of the Lake Jackson, Brazoria County community?
Well, I'll share a brief synopsis of the story, but it really comes down to relationships and fostering those relationships over the years. And one of those relationships, had an opportunity at the bank that was in the lending department. And I was very, eager to hear more about that opportunity. I had stepped away from banking, starting my own business for a while, doing some consulting. And so, I was really enjoying doing that. It was, very rewarding for me. But I always had, this back in my mind that I felt like I could do more in a larger organization. But I had worked in a lot of the large organizations, and it's sort of, the pendulum swings the other way to where you feel like you can't help as many people because you're constricted by, a large organization's machine. And so when I was approached about an opportunity at a smaller bank in a smaller community, that really spoke to me. And it was an opportunity to have real meaningful impact in a community that really needed it. And that spoke to me, and maybe it was time, place, and all of those things kind of converging. But it really, like I said, comes down to relationships, both the person that introduced me to the opportunity and also, what the opportunity allowed me to do in terms of building and impacting relationships that I could build down here.
Speaking of community, that was my next question. How did the local community, if you had time to get to know us a little better, influence your early days here on the job?
Yeah, so influencing the early days, when you're new to a community, especially a small town where everybody knows your name, and you're an outsider of sorts, just the community being so welcoming and open really helped me in those early days to become part of the community a lot more easily than I may have expected. And so that gave me the opportunity to really get to know people because of how receptive they were to me. And so that really did impact and influence the early days. Having worked in the big cities and the big banks, you don't really get that same kind of warm reception. And so that was my experience here. And so I felt almost instantly part of the community.
Did that shock you, or did you just say, God, this is kind of cool? Or
No, it really did shock me because, part of one of the things that attracted me to the position down here and coming down here was that it was a little bit of a homecoming for me, even though I'm from Arkansas, but I'm from a small town, and so it really has sort of a similar feel to where I'm from. But I go back home and visit, and, my small hometown is very cliquish. It's very not as receptive to people that are not from there. And so that was sort of my assumption that I would experience something similar coming into what I thought was sort of like my hometown. But my experience was actually the opposite. So that was surprising.
Okay. Well, tell me, or tell us, I should say, a little bit more about yourself and what attracted you to this area besides the people.
Right, yeah. So I mentioned a little bit about where I'm from. I'm from a small town in Arkansas, just about 15 miles from Louisiana, and I spent a lot of time in Louisiana, the northern part of Louisiana. I went to school there. And growing up in a very, very small place, but having big ambition and seeing big city lights.
At an early age?
At an early age, very early age. Always knew I was going to be in business in some shape or form. but my aspirations were always to go to Dallas to start my career. Dallas is considered the New York City of the South, where I'm from. And so if you were going to aim for the stars, most people, were aiming for Dallas. And so I ended up making the move to Dallas and starting my career in finance in Dallas. And so I lived that life for a time, still longing for sort of your roots along the way. Moved to Austin for another opportunity there. Spent quite a lot of years in Austin. Experienced its growth during the late 90s and the early 2000s with the tech boom and the dot-com boom and all of that. And then found my way to the Houston area and have been in the Houston area for the past, since 2005. And so been in this area for a very, very long time. And so, as far as my journey coming, the trifecta of Texas and largely big cities, or Austin wasn't necessarily a big city, but it was certainly one of the fastest growing cities at the time. And so, again, just sort of doing that trifecta and learning all about the Texas people and the differences, the good, just all the differences, and then being able to go to different banks that are similar in that regard in terms of I did the trifecta of all the banks. I was in the big mega banks, as a lender there. I was in the regional banks that were local but large. And then I've also worked in small community banks. And so I've sort of done all of those things as well. So I have a pretty broad experience base. And to be able to use all of that knowledge and sort of glean from that the things that I liked about those different environments, the things that I didn't like about those environments, the ways in which I could have impact, the ways that I was hamstrung, and then being able to look at those things, that list of the pros and cons, I guess you'd say, and compare it to this opportunity in this market. It sort of checked all the good boxes of things that I felt like were not only in lockstep with my experience, but also in lockstep with where I am in my life in terms of what I want to do in terms of giving back and what brings me joy and how I can pay it forward.
From all the big towns that you've been in cities and big companies you've worked for, do you fall in that category of you still can't take the country out of the girl?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no. I clean up good.
I thought you'd say that.
Yeah, I clean up good, but I still need to take my shoes off and put my feet on the ground and dig in the dirt. I still need to do that.
Good for you. Are there any local traditions or events around here, speaking of that, and I know one of them that you might mention, that have become part of your business identity?
Yeah, so, the bank has been around for, over 60 years, and so there's not really necessarily one tradition that I, tie to the bank right out the gate. It's more of the bank itself as an institution is a tradition. The building itself is a icon. It's the first thing that you see when you cross the bridge into the city limits, and so, that in and of itself is something that I think is not necessarily a tradition, but certainly iconic in terms of the building and the name recognition that the bank has. But as far as events or things of that nature that we align ourselves with and I think are known for is how much we participate or give back during the Festival of Lights every year. Holiday season, the Christmas celebration is always my favorite time of year, as many people love that time of year. And the Festival of Lights kicks that off. And, we've for years and years and years been the starting point, the gathering point for that, and the ending point for that. And so, being able to not just offer our parking lot for that activity, but actually be here and be among the people and, provide them with a few refreshments while they're doing the hard work and having some camaraderie and building relationships during that. It's certainly a local tradition that I look forward to every year, and I hope other people are aligning or attaching our name to that.
Well, you won't toot your own horn, but we all see what you do way before that, because this girl goes out, and I'm not kidding you, you would not believe what she brings into this bank. to get ready for the hot chocolate, for the candies, for the everything, and it's all over the place. And it's hard work, but we find a way to have fun.
That's right.
And thank you for doing that every year.
You bet.
Can you talk just real briefly before we go to break about your connections with the rodeo?
Sure. Yeah, that's another give back. I have several things that over the years that I really enjoyed. Junior achievement. I try to do that as often as I can. That's one thing. But the rodeo is something that I do year round and have done it for many years now. I think 2015 was my first year, and while that pales in comparison to many people that have been, they've been on the committees for 20, 25 years. I pray I can have that many years on it. But I feel very deeply and passionately about the scholarship fund that the Houston Livestock and Rodeo contributes to, and all the kids that, they impact their lives in such a meaningful way. And also being able to serve when you're on a committee, you can volunteer for the scholarship judging committee. And then that, again, that's just a real hands-on way of being able to do something, directly for the kids. And being part of Go Metro, you're spreading the word and getting raising money for students that are in that particular county, that particular Go Metro area. And so again, it's sort of, the action that you have in your local community to have that be, come full circle and be given out to those students in that community. It's just great to see. And then we have people, that come back and give their stories, their testimony after they've earned their degrees, and how much that was, how much credit they give to the rodeo for making that happen. The first generation, graduates and all of that. It's heartwarming, and it gives you the fuel that you need to keep going, because it is volunteer and it's not easy. So, you got to find the time, you got to find the energy, and sometimes you got to find the money to make things happen in rodeo. But yeah, that's definitely a passion of mine and something that I have very fond memories of.
Brazoria County, as you found out, is always proactive on that. Mm-hmm. And they have Brazoria County Day, which is gigantic. And today about half of this bank is going tonight to the rodeo. So.
Right.
We're going to be back in just a moment after we take a short break here, but we'll be back with Kristie after these words from one of our sponsors.
You got it.
Our podcast today is sponsored by First National Bank of Lake Jackson, featuring financial services with the integrity that you deserve. Let's talk. Call or come by and let's discuss your goals and plans for the future. First National Bank of Lake Jackson, putting you first for over 63 years. Member FDIC.
We are back with First National Bank on it, and our guest, Chief Lending Officer Kristie Sellers. Kristie, what's the biggest lesson you've learned about running or working for a business in a small town?
Biggest lesson. I mean, there's tons, right? I think there's a lot of lessons that you learn in anything that you do. And a small town just makes it a little bit more, I don't know, you have a bigger spotlight on you, I think, because it's a small town. And so word travels fast. So when you do something good, word travels fast. And when you do something, less than that,
it travels faster.
It travels faster. And so, when you're in the lending arena, then that could come down as just simply, did you say yes or did you say no? And so there's I put a lot of time and energy in trying to make sure that I, in anything that I do, that, I do it with the greatest amount of being present, really listening to customers and trying to help them. Because if you don't, you're going to miss the mark, and that's going to be remembered, for forever. And so, and the other thing is that whatever you do it with integrity. Integrity matters. It doesn't just matter. It's everything.
It sure is.
And so, my word is my bond, and that sort of thing is sort of the mantra that I live by because of the lessons that I've learned, whether that means that, in a small town, you try your best to help somebody, and if you don't really explain the reason, the rationale, and you don't try to really help them understand not just why this is a certain way, or why we're looking at something a certain way, but setting them up for success in the future. It's easy to say yes, right? The hardest thing to do is to say no. But sometimes you have to. And maybe it's not no, maybe it's a not now.
I've heard you say that. I was going to add that to what you were saying. That's definitely right. And you don't give them an answer that just cuts them off and defeats them.
Right. And that would be the difference in the big banks, right? And that's sort of the lessons I've learned, not necessarily from working in a small town, but working in the big banks. And then how do I really make working in a small town as impactful? Again, I kind of come back to that word because that's really what my goal is to have meaningful impact. And like I said, the hardest thing to do, no matter where you are or what bank you're working for, is trying to provide some a pathway forward for folks that are struggling or maybe aren't quite there yet. And so the biggest lesson that I've learned, no matter where, is be honest with people, show some compassion, give them tools that will help them, to try to set them up for success.
Love it. I'm going to ask you something that sounds like Barbara Walters would be asking, but if you could go back to day one, what advice would you give Kristie Sellers?
Yeah, so if it's personal, for me, and I've actually had sort of these conversations with myself, is trust myself more. I would tell myself to trust myself more, and just to go for it. And that would be my advice to my former self, my younger self.
Love it. I know you've been around long enough, and you have some favorite spots around. Where do you like to go when you're in town?
Well, I love shopping, of course. So I like the little boutique shops to go around and mill around and find, little gifts for folks for their, birthdays and Mother's Day and things like that. I love that. And there's several of those that I like to frequent. Food places, I try to go to. I don't really have a local favorite spot there either because I'm a foodie. I love all kinds of food. I don't discriminate. And so we'd be here for an hour for me to tell you my favorite spot on each category. But
that's on the next podcast.
Okay. But certainly any of the family-owned establishments and the dive joints, when you just stumble across a place, those are some of my favorites. So
sounds good. How do you hope that our business here at First National will be remembered in the community? Of course, it's been remembered for 63 years, I think, already, but how would you like to put your mark on it to help it be remembered?
I go back to, there's a legacy building component of my desire in that regard. And I remember the stories that I was told when I first came aboard about from all different kinds of people in terms of how the bank has helped them start their business and get off the ground, or when they had, when some struggle, the mid-'80s crisis. I mean, like they've given numerous examples time and time again in terms of how the bank has helped them weather those storms, whether it's from the startup or, some of the economic challenges. And the bank was just always there for them and stood up for them. And they remember that. They're extremely loyal. And so I think that, for the bank to be remembered to be consistent in their support of the people and the businesses here, and to continue to give the next generations the same kind of support that they had given past generations.
What is one dream project? It doesn't even have to be connected to the bank at all, that you'd love to bring to this area? Yeah. And I know one dream project is for you to move down here. You're working on that right now. Yeah. But I mean, what is a dream project that you might have on your heart?
Yeah, so there's kind of two, and they can kind of be combined in my dream world. It would be combined I had been part of a women driving business organization in the Houston area, and I thought that the ladies that started that organization were just well ahead of their time, and just bringing women business owners together and supporting each other, and not having a handout but a hand up, and serving as mentors to each other, and I saw the way that they would, give each other energy, and their businesses would, some were complementary and some were just not. They were just supportive of each other, but how that would help each other gain more traction and momentum in their businesses, to be together as a group, and especially, like I was mentioning, some of the difficult times, being there for each other. And so I would love to have something like that down here, but I would want to take it a step farther and actually reach down into the high school category and involve high schoolers in that endeavor, with some business education, financial education, how to start your own business, all of that sort of thing. And maybe not even have it just for women, although I definitely want to support women and feel like they have unique challenges. But I am a huge supporter of the entrepreneurial spirit, and so I would like to extend that dream project to all young adults trying to do something in the entrepreneurial vein.
There's lots of stories, but it brings to mind one story, and it's a young lady. I can't, of course, mention her name on this podcast,
Sure.
but she came to us with a dream, and she didn't know which way to start, and this and that and the other, and she went through the Kristie Sellers School, and she is thriving in her business, and that thrills me because I know her dad very well, and I got to go to the ribbon cutting, and I get to see what's going on. How does it make you feel after you've taken someone and you've kind of nurtured that, and now you see this, and guess what? She tells friends, go for it.
Right.
The worst thing that can happen is you not go for it.
That's exactly right.
But how does that make you feel?
I mean, that's the biggest give back for me, right? Is when I've helped someone or the bank has helped someone, and we've tried to set them up for success, done everything that we can to mentor, and then ultimately they have to go and do it, right? They have to put in the hard work and make it happen. But it is very rewarding and uplifting. Feel so proud that those customers are able to achieve their goals and dreams. I mean, that's what we do it for.
Do you think that it helps when you're talking to them one-on-one like we're doing right now, and you go, now look, here's what's going to happen. This is going to come up.
Right.
And do you think when that comes up that they go, you know what, I've been warned on this, and I know that I can make it through this?
Right. Yeah. So when I had mentioned a little bit about having my own business, and I was doing business coaching. That was part of my consulting.
Did you listen to yourself?
Absolutely. I had to have one-on-ones with myself routinely. And part of it is brainstorming. Part of it is accountability. Part of it is, mentoring and just being that voice of reason, or, that cheerleader. There's all those different hats that you have to wear as a coach. And so I think that it is impactful. Even a lot of business owners, they begrudgingly don't necessarily like those conversations. A lot of people don't like those conversations, but they understand that they're necessary. And over time, they even began to look forward to those interactions. But I think the first couple of times, even when I meet with new customers at the bank talking about normal bank business, the first conversation is the most awkward, right? Because it's a very intimate conversation that we have to have when we're dealing with finances. A lot of times people are dealing with a lot of mixed emotions about that, the woulda, shoulda, couldas, right? And the reason that you're in front of me is because you woulda, shoulda, coulda, and you have to say those things out loud, and lots of times people don't really like to do that. I don't like to do that.
And of course, some people don't even know what they need to get something started.
Right. And so, the first step is just being able to come in and sit in my chair.
Right.
And that's a big step, and I recognize that. And then, going through that first conversation, letting them know that it's going to be okay. We're just having a conversation, and try to put them at ease as much as I can. And then, I got to build trust. I got to build that relationship. I have to earn, since it is an intimate conversation, I have to earn that, right? It's not just, something that I expect. And then by the time we get to that point to where then we have to talk about some of the more difficult things, I think that they have relaxed enough that they're almost relieved in a way, because they know they need to share those things. They know they need to find an answer, solution, some path forward. And they know that they can't get there if they don't reveal certain things about their situation. But you got to get them there,
Get out of their comfort zone.
Right. They got to get out of the comfort zone, and they've got to address some of those things face front, head on. And then once they do, they feel better. And then the second conversation is a whole different animal, right? it's a lot easier at that point. And then, the subsequent conversations after that, it gets easier over time. And then again, the contrast to the big banks, again, in that regard is just night and day, because they have a method, a process. And I don't believe in a method or a process in its purest form, because people are people. You got to cater that to where that person is, right? You got to meet them where they are. And just because we're the bank and they're needing help from us doesn't mean that we dictate how that goes. We've got to meet them where they are. Or at least that's my approach to things.
I could talk to you for a half a day, but we're time sensitive, and I want to ask you one final question. Let's close with, what's a phrase you live by or words of wisdom you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh my, I've reached the age where I have words of wisdom. How exciting.
At least you do.
Right.
Or maybe you do, I'm asking.
Yeah, one could hope, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that what comes to mind a lot for me is, doing the work like it matters, but laugh like it doesn't. And what I mean by that is there really is a sweet spot that I think is what I try to achieve is, intensity and purpose. I try to, corral that passion for good and, but have a lightness in spirit, do everything, with a light, gentle hand as much as I can. Because our work does matter. It matters a lot. But you gotta laugh like it doesn't. You gotta approach it like it's, we're all here. We're all here sharing the same space, trying to do the best we can. Don't take yourself too seriously. Our work is serious, but don't take yourself too seriously. And some people I think confuse seriousness with depth or something like that. And I just don't. I think you can be playful and powerful, and you can be lighthearted and deeply committed, and you can serve excellence without sacrificing joy.
Sometimes that just takes the pressure off everybody.
That's right.
Kristie.
And don't we need more of that?
Yes, we do. I want to thank you so much for being our very first guest and for spending your time with us here today. We look forward to having you back really soon. Special thanks also to Lee Cowan with Marketing and Creative LLC for recording, editing, and distributing this podcast. So for the First National Bank of Lake Jackson and me, Dave Mayberry, thanks for joining us, and we'll be back with another edition really soon. You can bank on it.